Hello everybody, this is Kirby over yonder, and while SpongeBob is generally a very lighthearted, kid-friendly show, occasionally it can get really creepy. While these types of episodes don't pop up often in SpongeBob, whenever they do, they always leave an impact on the audience. And given how much creative freedom Nickelodeon gives the SpongeBob team, it makes sense that the show would have at least a few creepy episodes. And since it's the month of spooks, let's take a look at the top 5 creepiest episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 5. Nasty Patty. Remember the time SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs thought that they killed a man? Yeah, this is one of those dark but hilarious episodes of SpongeBob. So after thinking that they killed their health inspector, SpongeBob and Krabs go to bury the dead body, only to accidentally run into the police. The entire time you're in fear that SpongeBob and Krabs will get caught by the police, and this episode has a much darker color palette to it than most other SpongeBob episodes. Thankfully, it turns out the health inspector didn't die, but that doesn't change the fact that we just watched 11 minutes of SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs trying to cover up accidental murder. Though it's a really clever and funny episode that's perfect for Halloween time. Number 4. Squid Bob Tentacle Pants. Well, here's an episode about SpongeBob and Squidward being forcefully fused together, yet still trying to live their lives normally. Speaking as someone who enjoys his privacy, the thought of being with someone 24/7 really discomforts me. And you've really gotta feel bad for Squidward here. In this episode, we get to see a bunch of weird, disgusting combinations of SpongeBob and Squidward. As well as that, we're also treated to this disgusting abomination. I appreciate the creativity in this one, but I can't help but wonder what was going through the writers' heads while writing this episode. Number 3. Rock Bottom. Now, don't get me wrong, this episode is actually one of my favorites. The jokes in this episode are just priceless. But it's still sort of an ominous episode, where we see SpongeBob on his own, stuck in a new location that he knows nothing about. It feels like every little thing in this episode is just out to get SpongeBob, which on one hand is hilarious, but on the other hand, really makes you feel bad for the guy. The episode also has a lot of creative, but really weird monster designs. What's interesting to note is that this is actually one of the few times we see SpongeBob get genuinely angry. Rock Bottom is a slightly off-putting, but classic episode of SpongeBob. Number 2. Cuddly Hugs. So SpongeBob eats a rotten, drugged-up Krabby Patty, and hallucinates a weird giant hamster thing named Cuddly Hugs. Cuddly Hugs starts out friendly at first, however, when SpongeBob starts feeding his friends the drugged up Krabby Patty so they can see him too, Cuddly Hugs then begins to eat them. This episode subtly teaches kids that although something may seem good at first, it can lead to terrible consequences if you're not careful. This episode might be a metaphor for the usage of drugs, though maybe I'm looking at it too closely. The design of this thing alone is weird, not to mention the part where he starts eating people. I really enjoyed the creativity of a lot of the newer SpongeBob episodes, though this episode may have been a bit too creative. Before we get to number 1, I have one honorable mention. I Was a Teenage Gary. Don't get me wrong, this episode definitely deserves to be considered among the creepiest episodes in all of SpongeBob. It is really off-putting, though it is technically a Halloween special, so I disqualified it for the list. Number 1. Squid's Visit. This episode is just... ugh. It starts out innocently enough, with SpongeBob wanting Squidward to pay him a visit. That is until Squidward actually gets to SpongeBob's house, where we realize that SpongeBob turned the inside of his house into an exact, perfect replica of Squidward's house, meaning that SpongeBob has memorized every little detail in Squidward's house. Most of the episode is just us watching Squidward stare in awe at how SpongeBob was able to perfectly copy his entire house. That is until Squidward realizes that in the meantime, his house had burnt down. Squidward then breaks down and we get probably the most jarring scene in the entire show. There was no contest with this one. Squid's visit is easily, without a doubt in my mind, the creepiest episode in all of SpongeBob. Part of what I like about SpongeBob is its ability to appeal to both an older and younger audience. While the show does handle dark themes at times, it still remains relatively fun and PG. And I think this is why SpongeBob is so universally loved by everyone, including me. Are there any creepy SpongeBob episodes that you think I missed? Please let me know in the comments and have a spooky but fun October. See you all next time. Kirby out.